The highest quality Arabica beans grow at the higher elevations. At these elevations, temperatures are cooler,
which cause the bean to grow slower and much harder. Typically, the result is a nicer acidity.
High-grown Arabica coffees are grown at elevations between 1,600 and 2,100 meters.
The first stage of growing a coffee tree begins with planting a seed, the actual green coffee bean.
Coffee beans are covered and kept moist until beans begin to sprout.
After several weeks, beans will begin to sprout from the ground.
Younger trees are less susceptible to disease and produce more cherries than other trees.
Seedlings will begin to sprout leaves and will remain in the nursery for several months.
These trees are approximately 3 months old.
After 6 to 8 months, trees are established enough to transport into the farm.
The coffee flower is the first sign of a new harvest.
The flowering stage only lasts a few weeks.
When these beautiful smelling flowers dry up, the first signs of a coffee bean are found.
Over the next several months, these tiny buds will form into a green coffee bean.
Unfortunately, not all of the coffee on one tree will mature, ripen at the same time and rate.
These green coffee cherries will slowly ripen and turn red.
Only the ripest red cherries should be selected and picked by hand.
This practice is called selective picking and is the key to ensure high-quality coffee.
Red cherries contain more natural sugars, giving a sweetness to the coffee.
Harvest season lasts for 2 to 3 months' time and happens during the dry season in a region.
Farms will need to hire many harvesters during this time to ensure they will be able to pick.
The ripe red cherries at the peak time, underripe cherries should be left until the next pass.
Each pass will allow the harvester to select the ripe cherries.
The more passes, the more consistent the harvest.
This is an extremely time-consuming and labor-intensive process. Properly trained harvesters are not easy to find.
Every day during the harvest season, coffee cherries are collected and workers are paid by weight.
The best farms will reward their harvesters for properly picking only the reddest, ripest cherries.
These ripe cherries will produce a better cup and will allow the farmer to earn more income for their family.
Not all coffee varieties ripen red. Some trees produce a yellow or orange cherry when ripe.
Regardless of the variety, the same care is needed when harvesting coffee.
At the end of each day, the coffee cherries are brought to a collection point to calculate the harvester's wages.
It is very important to collect all of the cherries which were picked that day and deliver them.
They are brought to the wet mill washing station before they begin to rot or ferment.
Everything will be delivered to the wet mill to begin processing the cherries.
Note, after all of the processing of cherries is complete,
every 100 pounds of coffee cherries will result in only 12 to 15 pounds of roasted coffee beans.
coffee cherries should be separated by lot and farm area, then processed separately.
The classification of coffee begins in the wet mills. Classification is the separation of lower quality beans.
They might be tiny, unripe beans, less dense beans, or cherries with defects due to insects.
The washing station will remove dirt and debris using water. Less dense beans will also float in the water.
Tiny beans will be removed with these screens.
Less dense beans, known as floaters, rise to the surface and are removed to be processed separately.
Coffee cherries will be depulped, removing the skin from the bean.
Fully washed coffees also required the mucilage to be removed from the beans.
Mucilage is very sticky and contains a lot of sugar. Honeyed or pulp natural coffees leave this on.
The mucilage can be collected and used for composting.
Coffee beans will then pass through another system to remove small beans and left over cherry skin.
Finally, these beans will move to either a fermentation tank or a rinse tank.
Smaller farms have a similar process, but typically have less sophisticated equipment.
Coffee will be weighed and then processed at the end of each day.
This Colombian-style depulper uses 1/4 the amount of water compared to other systems.
Due to the minimal water used, it is considered more environmental and becoming commonly used.
Properly milled, processed coffee will give a much cleaner tasting cup once roasted.
Finding the farmers and micro mills who give this attention to detail is not an easy task.
Beautiful cherry selection like this is key, but only the start of ensuring the highest quality coffee.
Proper processing is required at every stage at both the wet mill and the dry mill to ensure the best quality.
Here are the Colombian depulpers being used in a more advanced micro mill.
This mill is bypassing the mucilage removers and collecting the beans to be honey processed.
Honey processed or pulped natural coffee removes the skin but leaves the sugar-filled mucilage.
The coffee is then dried together in the sun. This can develop a sweeter cup and a heavier, more complex body.
Fully washed coffees remove the mucilage mechanically or in a fermentation tank.
The fermentation process can take from 12 to 36 hours.
Beans might move to different tanks using fresh water to remove excess residue.
Coffee will be done fermenting once the mucilage becomes loose on the beans.
This can be tested using your hands. Mucilage will be noticeably loose and ready to be removed.
Mucilage is then removed from the friction of rakes and or from rubbing against the concrete walls.
Once removed, washed coffees as well as honeyed are dried in the sun and finally brought to the dry mill.
Coffee is now grown in over 70 different countries.
There are over 100 different species of coffee.
Coffee has 40 milligrams of caffeine per 100 grams.
%40 of the world's coffee is made in Brazil.
They make 2 million metric tons of it per year, or 6 billion pounds.
Starbucks uses Ethiopian coffee beans.
Coffee became popular in America in the year 1773.
Coffee is the second most traded commodity on the earth. Water is the first.
Hawaii is the only state in the U.S. that commercially grows coffee.
Coffee is actually a fruit. The pit of the fruit is the coffee bean.
The world's most expensive coffee is $600 per pound.
There have been 5 attempts to ban coffee throughout history.
Coffee has more caffeine than most energy drinks.
The world consumes close to 2.25 billion cups of coffee per day.
The world's first webcam was made to monitor a coffee pot.
Drinking a single cup of coffee significantly improves blood flow.
New York drinks 7 times more coffee than any other cities in the U.S.
54% of Americans drink coffee daily.
Saliva wipes out half the taste of coffee so it won't taste like it smells.
It would take 70 cups of coffee to kill one person.
Coffee has been found to reverse liver damage caused by alcohol.
Drinking 2 to 4 cups of coffee has been found to drop the risk of suicide by 50%.
There is a spa in Japan that lets you bathe in coffee.
Instant coffee has been around for nearly 250 years.
The average person spends more than $1,000 on coffee per year.
Researchers have successfully converted coffee into biodiesel.
Light roast coffee has more caffeine than dark roast coffee.
The coffee industry employs 25 million people worldwide.
Coffee has been declared illegal 3 different times.
When coffee wasn't popular, people would drink beer in the mornings.
Coffee is the second most popular beverage on Earth.
Some popular coffee shops use a machine to give off a fake coffee scent to attract customers, one being Starbucks.
Coffee was originally a food and not a drink.
Coca-Cola makes canned coffee. In Japan, there is a cat cafe where you can go drink coffee and visit cats.
Coffee is really good for your health and decreases your chance of having a stroke or getting sick.
If you plug your nose and drink coffee, it will taste bitter and sour.
For 150 years, Brazil has been the #1 producer of coffee.
Caffeine consumed from coffee takes 5 hours to clear 50% of it from your system.
In 2016, Hamburg, Germany banned coffee pods for being unnecessary waste.
20% of coffee has fecal bacteria.
Starbucks used to sell only coffee beans.